Have you ever noticed a flicker of subtle irritation, even in the calmest of moments when observing someone who seems perpetually ensnared by illness? Whether it's a friend with a chronically aching back, an acquaintance whose energy is sapped by unexplained fatigue, or even a public figure whose life appears to be a continuous series of ailments. And then, almost imperceptibly, a thought creeps in. Why don't they just heal? Why do they cling to that pain? Or at the other extreme, have you encountered those who, armed with spiritual mantras, dismiss physical pain as an illusion, a mere lack of right thinking, all while their own bodies whisper tales of deep, unacknowledged sorrow, of a shadow that silently follows them? This subtle judgment, this fleeting impatience, is not a flaw in your character. On the contrary, it's an astonishingly precise mirror. In that very moment, you're not just observing an external phenomenon. You're catching a glimpse of a universal truth, one that often remains hidden in plain sight, etched not in words, but in the very architecture of our flesh. The discomfort you feel, the slight disdain for the victim or the not spiritual enough person, is merely an echo of a deeper, more personal struggle within you. It's an unconscious recognition of your own hidden capacity for resistance, for holding on to what your mind long ago deemed forgotten, but what your body stubbornly remembers. Each of us is a living archive, a walking library of every unspoken word, every stifled cry, every swallowed truth. Our muscles, our fascia, our very bones become silent witnesses, diligently recording narratives that our conscious mind decided to edit, delete, or bury beneath layers of busyness and distraction. These forgotten chapters, these censored paragraphs, do not simply vanish. They coalesce, harden, transforming into what we call tension, pain, or ailment. They become the physical manifestation of our unlived lives, echoes of emotions too dangerous to feel, too shameful to express, too overwhelming to process in the moment they arose. Imagine a sculptor working not with clay, but with pure, raw emotion. Every time you recoil from anger, swallow a tear, or suppress a genuine laugh that seems inappropriate, that emotional energy doesn't dissipate into thin air. It finds a new home. It carves itself into the tendons of your shoulders, ties a knot in your stomach, or constricts your breath in your chest. Over years, decades, these countless minor suppressions sculpt a second body within you, a shadow body, if you will, built not of bone and blood, but of memory and unexpressed feelings. And it is this shadow body that often dictates the terms of your physical existence, whispering of ailments, orchestrating fatigue, and provoking those chronic conditions that baffle traditional medicine. The very ailments we observe in others and perhaps subtly judge are often the most vivid chapters of this shadow body's memoir. They are not weaknesses to be overcome by sheer willpower, nor are they divine punishments. Rather, they are complex, often desperate attempts by the body to communicate what the mind has consciously forgotten. It's the body's last, most urgent plea for attention, a call for the integration of a fragmented self. To truly heal, to reclaim the vibrant, fluid vitality that is our birthright, we must first learn to read this secret language, to listen to the whispers of our own embodied history. But why does this mechanism work so flawlessly? Why is the body such an impeccable archivist of our emotional past? And why do these suppressed fragments manifest as physical suffering? To understand this, we need to return to the scene of the very first transgression. If the body is a silent chronicler, holding forgotten pages of our lives within its depths, then what was that first moment, that crucial point when the ink of suppression first touched its living flesh? When exactly did you, that pure, untamed flow of energy that all children embody, encounter an invisible wall that separated you from a part of yourself? Recall those moments when your natural, pulsating vitality met an unspoken prohibition, when the right to anger, that ancient, primal feeling signaling boundary violations or injustice, was met not with understanding, but with condemnation, fear, or even punishment. Perhaps in response to your righteous childlike protest, your cry for help or indignation, you received not comfort, but a harsh, "Be quiet. Don't you dare. Good girls, boys, don't act like that." And then the energy of that anger, finding no outlet, unacknowledged and unlived, curled into a ball deep inside, becoming a prickly knot stuck in your throat or clenched in your solar plexus. Or perhaps it happened when your body, tired from endlessly exploring the world, craved rest, and its spontaneous desire to relax, to slow down, to simply be, was labeled as laziness, weakness, or an unwillingness to conform. When sensitive vulnerability, that fragile thread connecting us to the world and each other, was met not with an embrace, but with detachment, ridicule, or a call to be strong. Then tears left unshed became a corrosive salt within, and the need for tenderness transformed into chronic tension, a readiness for defense. And what about spontaneity, that spark of pure creativity, free movement, unbiased exploration? When was it suppressed by endless don'ts, danger, or what will people say? Every time your inner child wanted to dance without rules, shout with joy, or simply be silly, but encountered a restraining gaze, a stern tone, or ridicule, that energy retreated. It didn't disappear. No, it hid, froze, turning into stiffness in movement, a constricted voice, a quiet yearning for unfulfilled freedom. Or perhaps it was healthy aggression, not destructive malice, but that vital force that allows us to state our desires, assert ourselves, and push through obstacles. When was this natural expression of will interpreted as rudeness, selfishness, or bad manners, forcing you to become agreeable, invisible, compliant? The moment you learned to hide your strength, to reject your capacity for assertiveness, your body began to shrink, to become smaller, less noticeable, safer. Each such moment, each suppressed emotion, each discarded quality didn't just vanish. It found refuge in the body, creating an invisible yet palpable imprint. Chronic tension in the shoulders, a clenched jaw, a hunched back, a knot in the stomach. These bodily constrictions became silent witnesses to old, unconscious decisions. Decisions to give up a part of yourself for safety, for love, for belonging to the pack. The body, loyal to its owner, took on this burden, becoming a living map of all your don'ts, all your shames, and all your dangers. And it continues to hold this story like an unpaid bill awaiting its due. We've touched on how the body, this silent chronicler, stores the echoes of the unspoken and unlived. But the profound essence of this phenomenon, the bodily shadow, lies in a universal principle at the core of human existence, the drive for belonging and survival. from time immemorial to remain in the tribe, be it family, society, or the inner circle of one's own identity. We've been forced to exile parts of ourselves. The invisible inquisition of childhood, sometimes a fleeting glance of judgment or a careless word, taught us that spontaneity, rage, vulnerability, or even excessive joy could be dangerous. Thus, exile from the tribe was born, not external, but internal. We severed those facets of ourselves that seemed unwelcome or wrong in order to survive, to be accepted, to avoid rejection. These exiled parts, these unborn selves, don't vanish without a trace. They go underground into the shadow, but their energy never disappears. Imagine an unpaid bill. Every suppressed emotion, every swallowed cry, every rejected desire is a line item in this invisible ledger. And the longer this bill remains unpaid, the more interest accrues. It is the energy of this unpaid bill that accumulates and demands its release, its compensation. The body, being the most tangible repository of our psyche, becomes the arena for this reckoning. It begins to speak through pain, chronic ailments, and inexplicable tensions. This is not punishment, but a desperate attempt to return us to wholeness, to what was once exiled. Recall the myth of Cassandra, the Trojan prophetess, doomed to know the truth but never to be heard. Her prophecies, however accurate, were rejected, eliciting only mockery and disbelief. And what then? The unheard truth did not disappear. It merely accumulated, eventually leading to devastating tragedy. So too does our body, like Cassandra, ceaselessly whisper suppressed truths to us. It sends signals, at first subtle, then increasingly insistent, about those parts of us that have been rejected. Back pain might be a cry about an unbearable burden of responsibility. Chronic fatigue about suppressed rage that could not be expressed. We, like the Trojans, often ignore these prophecies, treating the symptoms but failing to listen to the message until the shadow engulfs us. This shadow, repressed and unacknowledged, doesn't just live within us. Sometimes it takes forms we recognize not in ourselves, but in those who evoke an inexplicable aversion, as if they carry the burden of our own unacknowledged history. Within each of us slumbers an invisible critic and at times an executioner, ready to condemn those who dare to embody our own exiled aspects. Look closely at the gallery of human types who evoke in you not just dislike, but a deep, almost instinctive irritation, contempt, or even disgust, especially when it comes to health and physicality. This is no coincidence. This is your shadow body speaking to you, pointing to what you yourself have forbidden yourself to feel, to be, or to express. The first archetype, often targeted for such condemnation, is the eternal sufferer. This is someone who constantly complains of ailments, who seems to live in a continuous symphony of aches and pains. Their fatigue is endless, their symptoms numerous, their need for attention insatiable. In them you might see weakness, infantilism, manipulation, and unwillingness to pull themselves together. You might feel rage at their passivity, at their inability to break free from a cycle of illness that in your view is merely an excuse for inaction. But why does this image resonate so strongly? Perhaps it's because the eternal sufferer dares to openly display the vulnerability, the weariness, the need for care that you yourself have deeply suppressed. You have forbidden yourself to be weak, to be imperfect, to need help, and thus their open suffering becomes a silent reproach, a reminder of your own carefully hidden I can't. You despise their laziness because your own need for rest is buried so deep that its manifestation in another seems an unforgivable luxury. Or consider another demon, the flawless Atlas. This is someone who is never sick. No colds, no sniffles, no fatigue. They are always bright, productive, energetic. Their resilience seems superhuman, their health unshakable. And paradoxically, it is precisely this perfection that can cause deep, irrational irritation. How do they do it? It's not fair. Do they never get tired? Whispers an inner voice. You might feel they are showing off their health, that they are too perfect. This feeling of envy mixed with anger arises because the flawless Atlas embodies what you have forbidden yourself, the right to weakness, to human limitations, to fatigue. You yourself may be carrying invisible worlds on your shoulders, trying to live up to some ideal of strength and invulnerability, and their apparent ease feels like an insult. Let me tell you about such an Atlas I knew. I'll call her Anna. Anna was the embodiment of indefatigability. Always in high heels, with perfect hair, she arrived at work long before the start of the workday and left last, managing to exercise and do charity work in between, seemingly never sleeping. Her productivity was legendary, her resilience exemplary. Anna was never sick, not a single sick day in 10 years, not a single word about weakness or fatigue. And it was precisely this flawlessness that caused a deep, inexplicable irritation in many, especially those who themselves were exhausted under the weight of responsibility. She's not human, they whispered behind her back. She must just be pretending, others thought. But in reality, it was Anna who, deep inside, despised any weakness. She despised colleagues who took sick days, considering it a sign of laziness. She despised herself for the slightest desire to rest. The irrational anger she felt towards weaklings was merely a reflection of her own harsh inner critic, forbidding her from being a living, vulnerable human being. Her body was a tool, not a sanctuary, and she squeezed every last drop out of it until one day, for no apparent reason, her left arm gave out, seized by a spasm that doctors couldn't explain, and rehabilitation dragged on for months. This was the cry of an Atlas who could no longer hold up the sky. Her body, in the end, demanded what she had so fiercely denied, the right to vulnerability, to rest, to a simple human I can't. Each such demon we project onto others carries a distorted message about what we have forbidden ourselves. In this shadow, in this rejection, lies not only pain, but also immense power, waiting for its moment to be acknowledged and reclaimed. The body's whisper, once dismissed as mere discomfort or an inconvenient truth, begins to reveal its true lexicon, should one dare to look into the abyssal depths of the self. Having traversed the shaded corridors where the psyche casts its unwanted reflections onto the somatic landscape, we arrive at a key question. What precious, life-affirming essence is hidden within the very demons we so fiercely reject? For in every archetype we condemn, in every facet of being we deem unacceptable, lies a distorted mirror reflecting a valuable capacity, an inherent right that we may have unconsciously exiled from our conscious world. Take, for example, the one we've dubbed the eternal sufferer, a figure whose presence causes irrational irritation within us. As if they are deliberately broadcasting a weakness we flee flee from. Hidden within their distorted image is a genuine strength, the right to vulnerability. This is not weakness, but the deepest form of courage, to allow oneself to be imperfect, to acknowledge pain, to ask for support, to retreat when strength wanes. By forbidding ourselves to be like the sufferer, we are essentially rejecting our own right to rest, to self-compassion, to accepting our limits. We suppress the capacity for genuine healing, for healing begins with acknowledging the wound, not with denying it or heroically overcoming it. What valuable capacity have you forbidden yourself, exiling this vice into the shadow? Perhaps it's the right to pause, to cry, to human imperfection, to refuse eternal struggle, or consider the flawless Atlas, the one who seemingly with ease carries unimaginable burdens on their shoulders, never showing fatigue, never bending under the weight of the world. Our rejection of them often stems from our own inability to be equally unyielding, but this is merely a superficial layer. Deeper lies a fear of our own strength, of the power we are afraid to manifest lest we be rejected or take on too much responsibility. However, in the shadow of the flawless Atlas lies another equally important truth, the right to weakness, to delegate, to renounce omnipotence. We suppress the right to be an ordinary human, to have our limits, to ask for help, not to be perfect. It's paradoxical, but by rejecting the flawless Atlas, we often fall into their trap, trying to be just as flawless, but now out of fear, not strength. We forbid ourselves to be spontaneous, impulsive, alive, for spontaneity does not fit within the bounds of flawlessness. What valuable capacity have you forbidden yourself, exiling this vice into the shadow? Perhaps it's the right to lightness, to anger, to manifest strength without fear of judgment, to acknowledge your needs. Each such demon from our inner gallery is nothing more than a distorted image of a lost virtue, a suppressed right to the fullness of being. It's the right to anger that becomes chronic irritation, to joy that turns into obsessive optimism, to sorrow that solidifies into bodily blocks, to spontaneity that contracts into rigidity. The body, this silent chronicler, holds not only the echo of our sufferings, but also the memory of who we could have been if we hadn't built walls around our true expressions. Unraveling this cipher, this inner alchemy where the lead of suppressed emotions can be transformed into the gold of true freedom, only begins with awareness. True understanding requires not only recognizing these hidden resources, but also observing how their exile manifests in our daily lives, shaping not only our bodily sensations, but also our most fundamental choices. We've spoken of the shadows that wander on the periphery of our consciousness, reflected in those we judge. But the true theater of their action is our inner world, that sacred yet often neglected vessel called the body. The unaccepted shadow, that rejected aspect of our soul, does not vanish into oblivion. It merely changes form, transforming into a symphony of bodily discomfort, chronic pain, and unknown ailments. This is not a metaphor, but a harsh reality unfolding in millions of lives, where the body becomes a living archive of unspoken words and unlived feelings. Consider those who live for years with chronic neck and shoulder pain. Perhaps their fear of being like that flawless Atlas who seemingly effortlessly carries the burdens of the world, forces them to take on an unbearable load of responsibility, never asking for help, never delegating, never allowing themselves to be weak. They fear that if they loosen their grip for even a moment, the world will collapse or they will be deemed incompetent. This internal stance, this denial of the right to vulnerability, places an invisible but palpable burden on the physical body. Muscles freeze in constant tension, as if preparing for an unseen blow or an eternal burden. Tension headaches, restricted movement, these are not just physical ailments, but desperate messages from the body, crying out about overload, about unbearable pressure that the psyche refuses to acknowledge. Or take those who suffer from unexplained digestive problems, a constant feeling of a knot in the stomach, or irritable bowel syndrome. Isn't this an echo of the fear of being like the eternal sufferer who, in our opinion, constantly complains and expresses their feelings openly? Perhaps this fear makes us avoid all conflicts, swallow insults, suppress our true desires and needs so as not to disturb the fragile peace around us. We don't allow ourselves to express anger, frustration, or even joy in its fullness, fearing judgment or rejection. The body, deprived of a natural outlet for these powerful energies, is forced to literally digest them, transforming emotional toxins into physical spasms and inflammation. This isn't just nerves. It's the body taking on the function of a voice, screaming what should have been expressed but was suppressed. How does your fear of being like these demons from chapter 4 with their exaggerated, rejected qualities lead you to make disadvantageous decisions regarding your body, health, emotional expression, or even lifestyle choices? Perhaps you ignore signs of fatigue, overwork, avoid confrontation, hold back tears, laughter, or anger, trying to be convenient or strong. This voluntary prison created out of the fear of not being good enough ultimately becomes a prison for the body itself, depriving it of its natural flexibility, energy, and health. Sometimes the objection arises, is just an illness, not psychosomatic. And yes, absolutely, it is an illness. The body truly suffers, and its pain is authentic. No one is advocating ignoring medical diagnoses or refusing necessary treatment. The essence of psychosomatics is not in denying the physical aspect, but in exploring its origins, in searching for the deeper message the body is trying to convey. Is not just nerves. It's a complex mechanism where the psyche and body are intertwined into a single whole, and what cannot be expressed on one level will inevitably find an outlet on another. To reject this connection is to ignore half of the equation, depriving yourself of the possibility of true healing. And the phrase, "I can't allow myself to be like that," weak, complaining, vulnerable, is the voice of the very shadow that holds you captive. In reality, you cannot afford not to be like that, not to acknowledge these aspects within yourself, for the price of their suppression is your own health and the fullness of your life. But there is another side to the coin, no less insidious than what we reject. This is what we idealize, what we worship, seeing in others a perfection that we believe is unattainable for ourselves. We've spoken of the shadows that gather in the corners of our being, of suppressed impulses and exiled parts of the soul that manifest as bodily pain and illness. These shadows are grim. They are the imprints of what we abandon to fit into others' worlds. But there is another kind of shadow, one that blinds with its brilliance, the golden shadow. It doesn't hide ugliness, but conceals treasures that we have unconsciously entrusted to others. Imagine you look at someone who seems to embody everything you strive for in terms of health, physical freedom, or inner harmony. Perhaps it's an athlete whose body seems a flawless temple of strength and grace, knowing no fatigue or pain, or a healer radiating peace and healing energy whose very presence feels like medicine, or perhaps it's someone with astonishing emotional resilience, capable of navigating life's storms while maintaining inner equanimity, even as your own body responds to every anxiety with spasms and tension. In the act of this deep, almost reverent admiration lies a subtle but powerful trap. We see in another what we believe is utterly absent in ourselves. We project onto them our own as yet unrevealed dormant talents, abilities, and potentials, considering them unattainable for ourselves. This is not mere envy. It is a form of voluntary self-robbery. We hand them the crown of our own greatness, refusing to acknowledge that the brilliance that so captivates our gaze is merely a reflection of our inner light. The body, a faithful witness to all our internal transactions, immediately reacts to this self-denial. If you admire someone's ease of movement, yet your own body is bound by chronic tensions, perhaps you have given that person your own potential for spontaneity and freedom. If you are struck by someone's ability to relax deeply while your own muscles are constantly tense, it's possible you have signed over to them your right to peace and inner stillness. These unclaimed qualities do not disappear without a trace. They pulse within, demanding recognition but manifest as unresolved tension, as fatigue without apparent cause, as unexplained pains, as if the body is trying to cry out, "Give me back what belongs to me." The golden shadow is not a curse, but rather a forgetting of our own nature. We forget that every admirable aspect we see in another is merely a mirror of what already exists or can be activated within us. The question to ask yourself as you delve into the depths of this golden shadow is this: who is your idol or object of admiration in the realm of health, physicality, emotional freedom, or inner harmony? And even more importantly, what are the talents, abilities, and unrealized potentials you have gifted or projected onto others, considering them inaccessible to yourself? Understanding this mechanism is the first step toward reclaiming your own wholeness. For what we so generously entrusted to others has not vanished. It merely awaits its moment to be reclaimed, to fill our body with new strength and authentic freedom. As we begin to gather these scattered fragments of our radiant self, the body will respond to us in a different language, the language of healing and rebirth. The path to wholeness begins not by expelling shadows, but by gently embracing them. Recall those fleeting pangs of irritation at someone's boundless energy, or perhaps a quiet disdain for another's constant fragility. These are not mere judgments. They are profound echoes from the forgotten corridors of our own being. Every archetype we encounter, be it the tireless Atlas shouldering the world's burdens or the perpetually weary sufferer adrift in a sea of ailments, carries a fragment of our own exiled self. The colossal energy we unconsciously surrender to these external projections, whether it's gnawing envy of another's seeming perfection or an instinctive aversion to someone's apparent weakness, is in essence our own dormant potential, our unrecognized vulnerability, our suppressed vitality. To reclaim this power is to embark on a sacred quest, to gather the scattered parts of our being, to recognize that the qualities we admire or despise in others are merely reflections, distorted or magnificently amplified, of what lies hidden within us. This is a profound act of self-reclamation, a homecoming for the soul's lost kin. Only by reintegrating these alienated aspects, both the luminous virtues and the clouded vulnerabilities, can the body truly shed its ancient burdens, dismantle self-imposed prisons of tension, and restore its innate balance, its vibrant, resonant wholeness. This is the profound alchemy of acceptance, transforming projection into authentic presence, fragmentation into fundamental wholeness. How then do we begin this sacred dialogue with the body, this silent archive? Let us embark on a simple yet profound practice. Dialogue with the symptom. Find a quiet place where you will not be disturbed. Close your eyes and bring your awareness to any area of discomfort, tension, or chronic pain in your body. This could be a persistent ache in your shoulders, a knot in your stomach, or tension in your jaw. Do not try to change it. Simply observe. Breathe deeply, directing your breath towards this sensation. Imagine your breath softening the edges of the discomfort, creating space around it. Now, mentally or even aloud, address this symptom directly. Ask it, what are you trying to tell me? What story do you carry? What feeling are you holding for me? Listen, be open to any thoughts, images, memories, or emotions that arise. Do not judge them. Do not analyze them. Simply allow them to surface. Perhaps it's a forgotten moment of anger, a long-held sorrow, or a suppressed desire for rest. Acknowledge its message. Thank it for its endurance, for its tireless efforts to communicate what your conscious mind has forgotten. This act of listening is an act of deep compassion, the first step towards releasing trapped energy. This initial conversation with the body is merely the first note in a much grander, more intricate symphony. The true depth of healing lies not only in hearing these initial echoes, but in understanding the very language of the body, the subtle nuances of its wisdom, the unspoken grammar of its gestures. Within this living temple, in the very architecture of our posture, the rhythm of our breath, the unconscious flow of our movements, lie deeper chambers awaiting the revelation of their intimate secrets. They speak volumes of untold stories, unfulfilled dreams, unexpressed truths that shape our corporeal existence. The journey into this profound somatic lexicon is a path of continuous discovery, promising not only liberation from discomfort, but a richer, deeply embodied existence, a profound resonance with the very essence of self, and unfolding into a life lived with authentic presence.